This episode is brought to you by the PowerMonkey Training app. Now, out of all of the cool things that we do with PowerMonkey, whether that be our camps, or our retreats, or in-person events, the thing that I'm most excited about and our team is most excited about is our new PowerMonkey Training app. The new one will have a complete redesign and a lot of cool new features that you haven't been able to access yet. There's really 4 categories of training skills depending on who you are as an athlete. The first one is probably the one that you're most familiar with, our skill plans. How do you learn a strict pull-up, a handstand, a muscle-up? They're all assessment-based. We put you into the correct level according to what your starting point is, and you build plans from there. The couple new ones that we're really excited about, one is our volume plan. So volume plans will be based for those athletes that are learning capacity around skill-specific training. So if you're an athlete out there looking to take that one muscle up and build it into 3, 5, 10, 20, and beyond, we have a plan to help build capacity around skill-specific training. Very, very unique, very different, something that we're new offering, really excited about. Additionally, we have our GPP plan for gymnastics. We call it our monkey method plan. This is a well-rounded gymnastics plan that you can be accessing on a beginner, intermediate, or advanced level. Beginner and intermediate are 3 days a week. Our advanced is up to 6 days a week. You'll be doing handstands, mobility, core work, bar, ring. It's a well-rounded plan around becoming more capable and confident around gymnastics movements. Our last types of plans will be our 365 plans, and these are bite-sized plans that can be incorporated into any training plan, starting with our core 365, something that's been in the app for a while, but a new feature is that we're going to be putting up one workout a day for free on the app. All you need to do is download and register, and you will get a free workout every single day that is core specific, between 5 and 10 minutes long, that you can incorporate into your training. It's a great starting point, and there'll be more of these 365 plans that help create a more well-rounded training experience. Come train with us with the PowerMonkey Training app. We think you guys are going to love it. Welcome to the PowerMonkey Podcast, where we chat with the best in the world about what they do. I'm your host, Dave Durante, and this week we have Vaughn and Chris Hinshaw bringing the band back together again, the crew that we were doing the open announcements with from last year. Again, for this announcement of the last open workout for the 2023 season, 23.3. A great workout here, one that we have some tips and tricks that we think will help all athletes out there, not just competitors out there, but also from a judging, from a coaching owner standpoint, some things that we think might be helpful. Good luck on this workout. Hopefully those handstands are ready to go, and we're excited to see what those scores look like. All right, welcome everybody to the last of our 3. I missed the days when it was 5 workouts, but we are 23.3, the last of this year's open workouts. It's a fun one, most likely a quick one for most people. I don't anticipate too many people being able to go through the entire workout here the way we saw the ladies do just a few minutes ago. But the workout itself, let's just go into, and we'll announce our special guests with us. But it's going to be starting with a 6-minute time cap. Complete as many reps as possible of 5 wall walks, 50 double unders, 15 snatches at first weight, then 5 wall walks, 50 double unders, 12 snatches at weight 2. If you complete those in under the 6-minute time cap, you're going to add 3 minutes to the time cap and complete 20 strict handstand push-ups, 50 double unders, 9 snatches as weight 3. If you complete those in under the 9-minute, you add another 3 minutes for the completion of the 12-minute workout, 20 strict handstand push-ups, 50 double unders, and 6 snatches at weight 4. The weights are going to be 65, 95, 125, 155 for the ladies, 95, 135, 185, and 225 for the guys. This is brutal. This is going to be a brutal workout for most people. Shoulders blowing up, trying to go out of the gate super hot, trying to get no rep, make sure they don't get no rep on a couple of these things to be able to get under that 6-minute time cap. But to kind of get into it a little bit, let's announce and introduce our special guest, kind of bringing the band back together again. I got my man, Vaughn here on with me again. I haven't had you on in a while, buddy. It's good to see you. And of course, Chris Hinshaw coming from the Pacific Northwest, not far away from me. And thank you both for joining us. Chris, how you guys doing?
I love when the band gets back together. I really miss our conversations like this, because every time I get off, I do a lap around the neighborhood because I'm just so stoked. You guys get me fired up every single time.
I know. I miss it.
Yep.
Chris, I wish I could say the same. I get up and run a lap, but that doesn't happen. I just stay here and do nothing. So
bro, you're on fire. that was funny.
But yeah, she was good. I mean, I try to be funny every now and then. You know, I try to be.
I miss you.
Well, Chris, let's jump in right now. We saw two athletes from CrossFit Omaha take on the challenge before we saw Danielle and Mal do it, and both of them just made quick work of it, especially Mal. I mean, we can talk about Mal specifically because it was just like a blur. I mean, she's just from another planet. I mean, she's in the mold of Fraser Tia in terms of what she's capable of doing. It's really incredible. But what were some initial impressions of this particular workout?
I was interested in the time domain. You know, we've had two workouts prior to this announced, and they were both long. And you know, when we start talking about 12-minute time domain, 15-minute time domain, that is considered long. And this one, I was, when it was announced, I'm like, man, is this going to push people? Are they going to go into 9? And is it really going to be upwards another one around 12 minutes? And so when we saw the first group go off, they went out like a shot. I was so impressed with the velocity that they attacked that workout. But then when we got into the second round, and the thing that I look for always is those transitions. What is their initial transition time from movement to movement? And then is that staying the same or is it increasing? And that tells you how damaging this workout is. When they went from that first round into that second round, their transition times doubled, which tells you how devastating this workout is.
Now, obviously, like picking up a heavier barbell and the weight increasing is a factor in there. But when you talk about transitions, are you talking about basically what people are doing between, like being strategic around it? What would be your recommendation in terms of how to strategize around those transitions?
Well, this is a perfect opportunity to take a break, to collect yourself. Remember that every single time when you are transitioning from one movement to another movement, what's essentially happening is that you're going from one set of motor units or muscle fibers to another grouping of motor units or muscle fibers. And when you do that, the oxygen-rich blood has to transfer as well. And so sometimes when you are on overload, you know, you're just really on red line, that transition from one movement to the next allows the body to kind of regroup and reposition itself going into the next movement. Same thing holds true with breathing. If you have to hold your breath in those wall walks because embracing yourself, then you're essentially putting yourself into a hypoxic state. You're essentially holding your breath like you're underwater. Well, then if you go into the double unders and you could breathe through the double unders, it's a chance for you to recover. Well, what about at the snatches? For me, every single one of those weights is heavy. And so I again have to hold my breath. Well, every time my breathing cadence changes, it's another adjustment for my body. And I will use those transitions to kind of help my body move from one movement to the next movement. It wouldn't be so abrupt, which allows me then to move faster in that particular movement. But that transition time, I was very surprised at the amount of time it took the athletes in that first heat when they went from that first series to the second series. And like I said, that doubling of time tells me a lot that this workout is going to hurt.
I think it's a little panic mode that sits in for some people, saying, I only have 6 minutes. I just got to go out of the gates, like just, you know, guns a-blazing. And then hopefully I hang on to be able to finish that first round.
Good luck. Good
right.
luck.
And, you know, the breathing component was kind of interesting with Mal mentioned using the double unders to reset her breath and, you know, using that time to be able to actually recalibrate in what you're saying. And I highly doubt that strategy of an athlete like Mal is going to pertain to the everyday athlete, but it seems like a good one. The double unders is probably the best place you're going to be able to reset, get your breathing pattern back in place. If, you know, you are an athlete that's most likely holding your breath on something like a wall walk.
Well, and the technique in that double under, so it takes me back to when you had Stacy come to camp You know, the
Stacey Irvin
tumbling.
Jr. Yep, former
Yeah,
USA gymnast. Yep.
yeah. You want to give that background because I'm about to give him mad props for what he taught me.
Yeah, just former USA gymnast, former University of Michigan national champion, now fitness influencer, just an amazing athlete.
Incredible. And what he taught me at Power Monkey Camp was something really remarkable. So his skill set in terms of putting his foot and ankle in a dorsiflexion, so essentially pointing your toes at the sky so that when you bounce on the ground, essentially doing your double unders, there is no give, there's no absorption. It's essentially pogo sticking on his foot with no give. And I watched him on concrete floor pogo stick, and he was getting a good 18 inches off of the ground. But it's because of one, he's genetically gifted, right? He's got a tremendous amount of fast twitch explosive fibers, but he's also been doing it his entire life. And it really taught me when talking to him how little fatigue that he generates by doing it properly. The mistake, the kiss of death that most people make when they're doing their double unders is they have a tendency to land on the ball of their foot and absorb that foot strike almost like they're landing on the ball of their foot when they're running. And that's not the case here. What we want to think about is what sprinters do in running. They dorsiflex the foot so that there is no absorption of the ground when that foot makes contact. And that's what Stacey taught me. And it was really incredible the height that he was getting, and it was creating no fatigue. And so that's why when I look at Mal and Danielle Brandon, they are recovering because they've got such solid technique.
Do you think that's something that an athlete that hasn't tried to kind of apply in a workout like this, or it's probably going to take some time for them to really be able to understand that idea of, you know, rebounding, or we call in gymnastics a blocking technique off of a surface rather than using the muscle tissue to kind of absorb and push within those reps?
I think the key is, yes, it's going to take some time. I mean, everything takes some practice, and this is a very advanced skill. Everybody has a tendency to want to absorb, you know, when their foot makes ground contact. But the nice thing is that there is a solution out there. Most people, double unders are very difficult. They're very fatiguing. And so you hear us talk and it's like, oh yeah, they recover. Well, it's because they have an advanced skill. That's why. But if you practice that skill, you can certainly be there because it is not overly challenging. It's essentially, again, all it is just pointing those toes up at the shin bone, and do not allow any absorption of that ground shock. Essentially turn that into ground force. And of course, in running, you do that. That's how you run faster, by essentially increasing the amount of ground force at foot strike.
Love it. So some good things around breathing techniques, making sure those transitions are in place, some better technical ideas around that double under. Chad, let's move to you with regards to the barbell work here. This has a nice combo of some duration to it for Chris's pacing stuff, barbell, and then gymnastics movements on my side. But we have this increasing barbell. I feel there's going to be a wall for a lot of people, even if you have the engine, even if you're able to sustain. I mean, how far people are actually going to be able to do it? The everyday athlete, you know, you're going to be able to do 185 snatches, even if you get there. I mean, there's going to be a wall, right? From your perspective, when you see 95, 135, 185, 225, or on the ladies' side, 65, 95, 125, 155, what's a strategy that you would implement for the everyday athlete to be able to say, hey, if this is manageable for you up to this point, how would you tackle these as we start seeing that decreasing number ladder to it?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, let me just say the combination of double unders and snatches, it's classic to me. It really takes me, it always reminds me of an old regional workout. I can't even remember what year it was at this point, but it was, I think, probably one of my favorite ones ever. It was, they did a certain number of double unders, and then they had, within a time frame, had to do the snatch that was on the bar. Obviously the ladder, the weight went up as they went through, and there was only a couple guys and a couple girls throughout the US at that point that made it all the way through that ladder. But anyway, that combination, I always like it. It's a painful one, you know, for me to do as an athlete, but similar thing in increasing in weight. And I think the big thing that I see when I see those weights, you know, like you said, Dave, there's going to be a wall there somewhere. You may have someone, if their max is 165, then there's not a great chance they're going to be able to do 185. So your strategy is going to be different than if your max is 195 or 205, obviously. But a big thing for me is seeing athletes go through these types of workouts and they're just power snatching all of them, which you should power snatch most of them if you're able to, because you're going to take more time and energy if you're squat snatching. But the thing is that if your max is 145 and you know you're going to have to squat snatch 135, you need to at least do a couple squat snatches with the 95. And it's not going to take you that much more time, but just to make sure that you're primed and ready for that squat snatch. Otherwise, it's going to be very ugly. And you may or may not make it. You're going to give yourself that better chance. So I think that is really the main technical point or tip that I would give. If there's a weight that you know that you're going to get to, that you might have to squat snatch, or you're going to have to squat snatch, make sure that you're doing a few squat snatches with those lighter weights to really prime the body. Now, if your max is 165 or 175, or on the female side, it's 115, and there's a good chance you're going to get to those weights that are a little above your PR lifts. I mean, we've seen athletes in open workouts PR their snatches or their clean and jerks all the time, all over the place. And I assume that's going to be the case here as well. If you have the time, if you need to take something in between 135 and 185, for example, or 95 and 125, obviously that rep is not going to count, but will it allow you the opportunity to snatch 185 or 125 or 225 or 155 on the high end there if you take one or two lifts in between? Now, again, you're going to have to get there and you're going to have the time to recover enough to take those extra attempts, but it's just an option for you if you are in that situation where you're fit enough or have the ability to get to these heavier weights with that amount of time. So
now I want to ask you a question about that, but you're talking about some PRing during I just want to take a quick segue. The workout from last week, I'm pissed off that you weren't on with us because there were thrusters. And the last time we had a conversation, the three of us, Chris, you constantly bring up the fact that Chad is able to do over 400-pound thruster. And Chad, I'm wondering if you actually did 23-2 point B.
Bro, this was your jam.
This was your jam, man. No worldwide leaderboard thruster in there.
I know. Well, 5 minutes though. 5 minutes to do that after all that? No.
No, you should have just sandbagged the front side. Let me coach you.
I need a coach, Chris.
You should have just sandbagged that front side, and you could have been number one.
We got to give out some love to the Wall Street weightlifter Graciano Rubio, who I think prior to the workout he did 405 thruster just to kind of use as a warm up, and then he did 375 in the workout. But Chad, I was waiting for you to throw on those 4 plates and show it off.
That'd be awesome.
You guys would be gravely disappointed if I did that workout, or even just went and tried a thruster right now on its own. It would be sad. So hate to let you guys down, but.
Well,
I don't believe it.
I do want to ask you maybe before we get out of here, since it's the first time we've chatted since the Open started, whether or not you guys are doing the Open and how it's been going for you. But let's finish up this conversation here. So barbell work, making sure that we're kind of testing things out, using that squat snatch a little bit more throughout, and using it as a reliable option for those of us who maybe are on the border of our PRs when it comes to those higher barbells, and maybe testing them out with some of the lighter barbells so that we're a little bit more primed. Chad, would you recommend doing a bunch of these prior to the workout? And what's the balance between fatiguing yourself and making sure that you're prepped, or using the first round as that prep with the lighter weight?
Yeah, sure. I think it depends on the athlete, how good your mobility is, how long does it take you to warm up normally. Keeping in mind as well, for me, I'm always thinking in terms of weightlifter, sport-specific weightlifter versus CrossFitter. Sport-specific weightlifter is going to get tired quick. We're lazy, all that stuff. CrossFitter, you're used to training a lot. It's not going to hurt you to go in there and do some snatches before the workout. And in fact, it's probably not going to do anything but stimulate you. So if I was working with a CrossFitter, making sure that they're ready and prepped for this workout, I mean, they'd be doing at least some handstand push-ups and some double unders, and I wouldn't be afraid to have them actually go up and snatch heavy, honestly, just for that stimulation. So
all right, good to know. I will be putting on my PR weight of 115 and testing out a few of those before I get after the workout. So we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely, you should.
But all right, let's jump to some of the gymnastic stuff here, where all the real interest lies. First, I just want to make another note here, because it's something we've talked about quite a bit over the podcasts when they've come up over the last couple of weeks and months. And let's step over the wall walks really quick and just go to the handstand push-up, because I think this is going to be for the athletes that can get there. And we saw it with the two athletes that were from CrossFit Omaha. Give it a try. They were both very, very good athletes. I think it's a little deceiving when you have, good athletes, coaches, very capable, be the at-home workouts and thinking that this is general population. They're both very good athletes. And so it might be a little deceiving in terms of how far they got versus what most athletes are going to do. But with that being said, there are some new standards again with the handstand push-up. And we've talked so much, one, about kipping handstand push-ups not being a factor anymore. And I think we're almost at a point now where we can see that CrossFit is most likely not going to be incorporating this movement anymore, something that we've been preaching for a very long time. Let's stop doing kipping handstand push-ups in terms of the value that they're bringing for longevity for the everyday athlete. Like, there's a big difference between dropping on your head in a workout, especially as you fatigue, versus potentially using them in a higher level workout where you're doing a deficit and the head isn't touching the ground. Very different there. But so we're seeing more wall walks and we're seeing a lot more strict. All right. So the everyday athlete out there, I would highly recommend continuing working towards strict movement patterns, scaling appropriately when you're in your own workouts, moving back home, programming for your gyms, coaches, and owners out there. Let's move away from this kipping handstand push-up. I don't think it has long-term value in terms of workouts and how you're going to be seeing it. Does anybody want to add anything to that before I continue?
No, I think you covered it, Dave. I don't want to step on your toes there. So
no, I mean, I don't know how many times I've mentioned this.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, I'm fairly good at handstand push-ups, and I have wrecked my neck in workouts with kipping handstand push-ups. And I mean, you can kind of do the same, well, something similar with strict. You still need to control it, but you have much more of an opportunity to control it going down and coming back up when it's strict. So I completely agree. Most people don't need to be doing kipping handstand push-ups.
Awesome.
Especially in competition. I mean, that's the problem. Back in my competing days, the stupidity that I had when I was racing the clock, all good sense just went out the window. I think back on certain mountain passes that I descended on, and if I fell, I was going to die. And it was, but because I was on the clock, it just, that sanity went out the window. And this is an area, like you've said, Dave, you said this since we've known each other, you've talked about this.
Yeah.
The damage that is done to your spine and the risk is not worth it. And it's nice that we're really addressing the longevity of the athlete now.
Yeah, but I appreciate that, Chris. And, better late than never kind of a thing. And you're seeing it like, this, let's just push it off, sweep it under the rug. Let's move into a new direction. We're not going to address it in terms of making an official announcement, but you're not going to see that movement anymore. I would highly doubt that you're going to see a kipping handstand push-up again in an open semi games workout. You're going to see variations that are a little bit more challenging, or you're going to start seeing the strict more. So, and the continuation of the wall walks and different variations. So just be prepared from that mentality if you're a coach and athlete out there in terms of how you programming moving forward. Additionally, we saw some additional new standards, and this is probably the 20th new standard for the handstand push-up that we've seen in the last 5+ years, right? Constantly changing. There's some things I liked, and I think there's some other things that are moving in the direction that are going to make this a really viable long-term movement pattern, but are not quite fully there yet. One, we saw that I'm going to read the entire standard because I think it's important to note this. So bear with me as I go through this, just so that we're all on the same page with this setup. Okay, so the way the standard is read, At the bottom, the head must make contact with the ground. All right. That's fairly simple. If the head and hands are on different surfaces, the surface must be level. Okay. So that means that an athlete can stack up some maybe plates or whatever and put an ab mat underneath if you want some cushioning for your head. No athlete did that in the workout here, which means that you have a hard surface that you're coming onto, even with strict. So if you are an athlete that struggles on the descent, be conscious of the fact you're going to be coming down into something hard. All right. You can put a mat under there, but obviously you have to make sure that it's nice and level. This adds a new wrinkle of challenge because that means you have to have a piece of tape on the floor as well as on the plates to make sure your hands are in a good position. But then also going from wall walks to the handstand push-up, you're going to need to either have a secondary place to be able to do them, or someone has to come and set that setup for you while you're in the middle of the workout as you transition from wall walks into handstand push-ups. So something to consider in terms of another wrinkle if you plan on trying to have an ab mat in there. Feet do not need to remain in contact with the wall during the duration. Contact to the wall for the duration of the movement, but the feet must return to the wall at the beginning and the end of each rep. This is important, all right? So your feet don't have to be against the wall the entire repetition, but they have to start and finish. So only your feet can be touching the wall as well. So your butt, your legs, your head, your back cannot be touching the wall. And we saw some athletes getting no reps because of this. So making sure that the feet and heels are the only part touching, but they don't need to be touching the wall as you're going through the repetition. So if you're kind of freestanding as you're going through, that's okay. Another thing that actually we're going to see athletes need to be conscious of, and also for the judges out there, because we're going to see people getting no rep for the feet coming away from the wall during the movement. It's okay as long as it's starting and finishing with the feet touching. For RX athletes, handstand push-up must be strict. Okay, kipping is not allowed, very clearly stated in there. Any repetition that is assisted by the hips or legs will not count. Okay, only the heels may touch the wall during the repetition. Feet. Okay, this part is also a really big point of contention. This standard requires a lot of the judges because you have to be watching from the side to make sure that the hips, feet, back are not touching the wall and just the heels are. But also there's a component of the width of the feet. The feet may be no wider than the width of the hands. So you have to be able to watch from the front as well. So as a judge, you have to be almost the head on a swivel, be able to watch from an angle from the side as well as from the front, which I think makes it extremely challenging from a judging perspective. And honestly, most judges were watching from the side, which was the normal point of view. And not a lot of athletes, but there were some reps that were being done in the workout where the feet were going outside of shoulder width and they were being counted as reps. And I think it's more on the judges being new to all of these different standards more than it is just not giving, not paying attention. So I think it's extra challenging on the judges to be able to watch from various angles, and those feet being wider than hip width is going to be a really, really challenging component for a lot of judges out there. Anybody want to jump in before I make a couple additional points?
I find that what you just said is really interesting because for the athletes that are trying to advance, there could be a substantial risk associated with getting no reps by CrossFit HQ because you just can't be watching, like you said, Dave, all of those things at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you send in a video and it's from the angle that they shot, there's a possibility that they'll no rep you in the submission video.
Yeah.
So we have to be extra. There might even be a necessity to have two judges if you're someone that's looking to submit a video where you need someone to watch from the front and from the side. So it's something to be considerate of if you're an athlete looking to submit. I think that's a great point, Chris. But it's an extra wrinkle for the judge out there that I think is going to make it challenging. I appreciate the fact that they're considering that component, but it's going to make it a lot harder on the judges.
I have a question for both of you, Dave and Chad. So in the wall walks and the snatches, would it better suit a short athlete by doing those? Like, for example, when I look at Mal and I look at Danielle, is height really come into play? I mean, I must assume that on that wall walk, it absolutely does.
I would think so. I mean, shorter lever, what's going to happen is, from my perspective on the wall walks, the same number of steps is going to occur. I think if you watch an athlete who has a good kind of movement pattern, which we talked about in the Open last year when wall walks came in, what the pattern looks like. You should find a movement pattern with your hands that is repeatable on the ascent and on the descent. And I think the number of hand movements is going to be similar from every athlete. But for someone like a Fikowski, whose levers are so long and so tall, the average step is going to be bigger, hence longer time frame for each of the repetitions. So I think the steps are going to be similar for every athlete, but it will take slightly longer for those athletes when it comes to the wall walks. Not sure on the snatches there if you had anything, Chad.
For the snatches, for sure, it really depends. I think it's more about the strength and the leverage of the athlete. I mean, so the taller athlete has to move it further. So it would make the easy answer would be to say, yeah, the athlete that has to move it the furthest is going to be expending more energy, but that's not necessarily the case. If the athlete that's taller has more mass and they're stronger, they have better leverage also, then they're going to be able to move that barbell every rep more efficiently, more effectively. So they're going to conserve energy. So it really, to me, doesn't have as much to do with the height of the athlete as it does the technique, the strength, and the efficiency, the leverage of the athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So I have two more questions for you, Dave. So you had just mentioned about hand positioning and when you're doing the wall walks and keeping track of the number of steps that your hands are taking. So if we roll back to last week's workout where we had the shuttle run, that's the advice that I was giving is it really 7 steps? And is that the number that you're going to be taking? And then your backup would be 8. And so what you're doing is you're developing a cadence based upon those. And so you have your primary, which you think that you're going to hold 7, but maybe it rolls to 8. And for some people, it may have gone to 9. Are you saying the same thing that you would do here is 100%. Have your count?
Yes. Yeah. I have a count with the handstand push-ups too, the wall walks. And I think it'll be, for any athlete that's fairly proficient with wall walks, it'll be similar. There's not much more that you can do, but it'll end up being between 3 and 4 steps back and 3 and 4 steps forward, depending on how big of a first step you can take and be able to the heels of the hand, the palms of the hand, just on that tape line. So I think the cadence here is just as critical as it would be on a shuttle run or anything else that you would do in the endurance world, Chris. There needs to be a cadence on your handstand walking, your handstand wall walks. It needs to be something that's considered much more when you're an athlete at that level. One, I think it's just great for pacing purposes, like you talked about. So you can kind of keep the breath intact, know exactly what the pattern looks like. An example of this that I think goes awry a little bit is if you watch the first few reps of Danielle Brandon, she tried a technique where she kind of almost donkey kicked up into the wall, where she was kicking off of both feet. And I think that's an athlete trying something that is unnecessary, where she probably doesn't do wall walks like that in her normal training. But she was like, okay, this is a really quick portion of the workout. I'm going to try something to go faster. And you saw after 1 or 2 attempts, she went back to the version that she was normally accustomed to doing. And so I would recommend to keep a pattern intact that you would normally use, and that comes with feet up against the wall, but also the pattern of your hands down on the ground.
Perfect. Yep. I'm glad. My second question was that essentially kip that she was doing for a little bit in the beginning.
I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's helpful in the long run. I don't think it's something you can sustain as the workout starts to increase and as the breathing component comes into play. That's going to be an exercise where I excel and I'm going to go fast, but I'm going to be still stepping with one foot and the other. I think that's the best way to be able to maintain through the numbers that we're seeing here. One last thing on the handstand push-up, and I know there's a lot of components to it. The tape being set 10 inches away from the wall, I think is a great additional step, something that's going to help reinforce the idea that we talk about endlessly, the tripod position, making sure the head kind of tracks out in front of the hands a little bit more. We saw Boz put in that wall-facing handstand push-up the games last year, which kind of added a wrinkle for most athletes that are used to doing head in line handstand push-ups. So this is kind of a step in that direction for better technique. I don't think it goes far enough. Instead of setting a standard around the distance away from the wall, as well as the distance, like the max length of that piece of tape being 30 inches, I think both of those should be measured more around the person's shoulder width than they should a general standard. That's going to allow for each athlete to have a little bit more of a level playing field. I mean, Mal's shoulder width versus Danielle's shoulder width are pretty significant. So Mal having a lot of playroom, not that she used it, but the fact that she can put those hands out very wide and still be within that 30 inches allows her to kind of decrease that distance, as opposed to maybe somebody like a Danielle, or on the guy's side, somebody that has incredible broad shoulders that, goes wide, but has to still be confined by that 30 inches. So I think we're moving in the right direction, but I still think it's going to be challenging for the taller athletes to be able to compete with the shorter athletes that can take advantage of that 30 inches of the length of the tape, as well as the distance away from the wall. So something to consider. And I will say, I want to give a shout out to the CrossFit Omaha athlete who performed in the first section, Matt Watt. He had the best handstand push-up reps at anybody. His handstand push-ups were awesome. He mentioned them being a strength for him, and he was still doing singles by the end. So kind of take that in consideration. But he had a great tripod. He was in a really nice setup position. His elbows were basically at 90 on the way down. So from a technical standpoint, for me, what I look for, I thought they were beautiful reps, and I thought he did a really good job of making sure that position was just as important as the speed.
Yeah, Dave, I'm glad actually that you really spent some time talking about the handstand push-up, because I did write down all the splits for both Mal and Danielle and everything, including their transitions for all the movements. And their greatest level of fatigue was in the handstand push-up. I mean, granted, it was deep into the workout, but in terms of their drop-off in pacing was substantial. It was much more than the snatches in going up in weight. By far and above, it was the biggest difficulty that the two of them had.
Yep. Yeah, and I when I was watching that, I came back to the conversation that we've had so many times around our capacity WOD course that we teach. And Chris, one of the things that you bring up all the time is when you were working with Spencer Hendel around his 100 strict handstand push-ups, how he would do, a few reps, take some rest, and get back at it. And 3 reps was his way of making sure that he was able to keep a pace going. Yep. I would recommend an athlete right off the bat, if you're able to get the handstand push-ups, have a number in mind that you can sustain. Meaning start out with 2s or 3s or whatever. But if you're doing singles right away, that's totally fine. You're going to blow yourself up so fast if you try to do a set of 5 to 10 and then have nothing after that. So I really recommend any athlete that gets to the handstand push-ups, pick a chunk that you can stick with, come down, rest a few seconds, 10 seconds max, and get back up there so you can actually keep those reps going.
Chad, would you recommend, anybody, for example, in the snatches, to do anything other than single reps? Would anybody do touch and goes, in your opinion, on this workout? Even Danielle said she wouldn't.
I don't think it's necessary to touch and go. I think it's what everybody kind of jumps to and wants to do, thinks it's going to be faster. And in the long run, I would say usually it's not. For me, on any workout that I do, and I know I'm not a great example of doing CrossFit, but I can always go faster on any workout, pretty much any workout, by doing singles. Now, unless the weight is just 65 or 95 the entire workout, where maybe I can do chunks of touch and go and get a little bit of a better time. But for the most part, no, especially with that, even just getting to 135, it's an easy loaded weight to drop. Got 2 45s on each side. As long as your plates aren't really, really bouncy. If they are, then you can maybe load up a 25 and 2 10s on each side. So you've got something that'll die on the ground a little bit more, so you're not having to chase it around. But especially by the time you get to that 135, which happens pretty quickly, I just don't see really any value especially for most of us. Now, if you're a freak games level athlete that can hold on to the bar through the whole workout, that's a little bit of a different story. Maybe probably not for all of the weights, but for most of us, there's no reason. I don't think there's really any reason to touch and go.
All right. I think I'm done with my handstand push-up rant.
Are you sure?
Sorry about that. I know I was kind of getting fired up about it. I just have such a passion for handstand push-ups that I got to.
Can we talk about? I can talk about the squat for a minute if you want. Change over to that.
All right, and that's the end of the podcast, everybody. Chris, where are you heading right after this? I think you got a cool little workout you're going to be doing.
Yeah, so I'm heading over to CrossFit Fort Vancouver, and Justin Medeiros is doing his workout before he heads off to the Arnold. So I'm going to do that with him and his coach, Adam Neffer, and then Ellie Turner is also there.
Awesome.
And then a team is also Trista, who is in first place now for the teens, who has won both of those events. She's also there. So yeah, it's a nice little afternoon. Looking forward to it. Yep.
Amazing.
That's why this conversation for me was, I would never miss it, because it's like, wow, I'm talking two of the most intelligent and most experienced gymnasts and weightlifters, and that's really what this workout is all about.
I appreciate that, Chris. And it's always good to chat about these things. And before we get you out of here, we saw you had a really cool experience recently. I just want to hear about it, maybe briefly, that you got to jump out of a plane recently with the Golden Knights. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I did. I got an invite late last week, and yeah, they said that, hey, the Golden Knights, they're down in Miami, and if you're interested, we'll get you a spot. And this was something that it was just too good to pass up. I have a huge fear of heights, believe me. So like when I fly, I have to shut the window shades and deny that I'm actually in an airplane the whole time. And given as much as I fly, it's like no wonder why I'm riddled with anxiety. And so this was something where I was really like wondering how bad it was going to get in terms of anxiety. But this is where I learned about like why they're special. So the Golden Knights are the best of the best in terms of parachuting, and doing a tandem jump with them is about as safe as it can be. But what they did, what was special, was they would lay out the format. This is what's going to happen. And they went through all the areas that would be potential concerns by the person that was doing the jump, me. And what they would do is eliminate any of the unknowns. You were never like, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? It's like, what's going to be like, for example, I'll give you an example. What's it like when you are climbing through 9,000 to 10,000 feet and you're on the plane, you're sitting in an open bullpen, and they open the door? What's that feel like? Is it really turbulent? Does it pull you out of the plane? Is there suction? So before we got to jump height, the camera guy that was shooting for me, he's like, oh, it's hot on the plane. Let's, roll the door open and pull it off. Well, it was nothing more to give us that feeling of what it's like with the door opening. And then he opens the door. This guy, now he had a parachute, but he lays down in the door opening on his back, head up, and he basically is tanning himself as we're shooting through 10,000 feet. And it was like, wow, it's really kind of not that bad. So they would do things like this. And when it cut down to like the jump, the guy even said, okay, so reminding me, he's like, okay, so when it's time to jump, you're going to squat down, deep squat, you're going to duck walk, and then we're going to go 1, 2, 3. So when that happened, I already knew what was going to go on. I never once had any fear, ever. And I have fear when I go from Portland to San Francisco on a United flight.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. It's a bucket list item that I'd love to do too at some point, be able to actually go skydiving. Never got a chance to do it, but I'm not going to spoil the surprise too much here, but at next camp, there's going to be someone that's coming as a camper that you're going to be able to chat with that I think is going to be really, really cool, that has some similar stories that you're talking about, Chris, now.
Yeah.
Little special
amazing
guest that'll be fun, but
can't wait. Can I add one thing though on this workout? Just so I want to just, so the one thing I want is I want athletes to take some ownership here. And Dave, Chad, we talk about athlete ownership all the time. You need to do two things. One is, how deep into this workout am I going to go? And are you going to be limited based upon time, right? Or is it you're going to be limited based upon the weight of the snatch? So for me, I would be limited based upon the weight of the snatch. And so I know that that's where I would stop. I'm not going to go beyond that point because that lift is too heavy for me. Well, now what I'm going to do is define my strategy based upon that endpoint. And during that strategy, this is where you come up with your pacing. Now, a lot of people, they're going to look at this workout and go, do I really need to like pace? And it's like, of course you do. Anything over 3 minutes, you have to have a pacing-based approach. You have to conserve the consumption of your energy in order to maximize your performance. But you have to know your endpoint. And so the number one thing that makes elite athletes great is that they're extremely good at estimating the duration of the workout for them. And so everyone in this workout, you need to do that because that's going to define your pacing strategy, the amount of intensity that you're going to attack this workout with. And so if an athlete thinks they're going 12 minutes, then your approach is going to be significantly different than that person who's going to go 6 minutes. And this is where athlete ownership comes in. It is your job as an athlete to think about it, to come up with it, and then afterwards, how good did you come or how close did you get at your guess?
I love it. I love it. Always come back to that pacing. You guys, both of you, are going to do the workout?
Me? No, I'm going to support people. Listen, I'm just trying to get out and work out so my chest doesn't hurt anymore. That's all I want. Just no chest pain.
Chad, what about you?
Yeah, probably not this one. Maybe at some point. The one that I actually want to do the most is probably 23.1. It seems the most.
Did you do 14.4?
Interesting. No.
You didn't? Okay.
No, I don't
So it's
remember.
not a
I don't think I
retest
did
for
that
you?
one back then. No, I
Okay.
don't think I did it. So
Yeah, I want to see your thruster, of course, even if it's just without the 23.2
my
part.
my 400-pound thruster. I'll
We
get
can
that
do it
done
at
for you.
camp because I want to
Yeah.
redo that workout anyway. Me and Jordan are going to redo it at next camp, so maybe we'll have you jump in with us.
Okay.
But
There you go.
before you jump off, I'm going to probably give this one a try either tonight or tomorrow. But predictions here. Anything? Anybody you think is going to stand out and just hit a home run here?
I think Jeffrey Adler is going to win the Open.
Bold. He's in first place right now. Bold.
You want me to give my prediction for your score, Dave? Is that what you're looking for?
Oh, no.
I think
I'm
you're gonna
like,
hit 135. You're gonna hit
that
135.
135 is like staring me in the face, like 12 reps of 135 snatches. Like, I just want to get to the first set of handstand push-ups and just be able to like get through that. So we'll see. That'll be my big challenge. Jeffrey Adler, absolutely. I mean, you're gonna be with Justin. You got to give some love to Justin. And I'm just gonna go out on a limb. I don't think anybody's gonna beat Mal. I don't think anybody's gonna beat Mal's score. And that's with 2 no reps. She got 2 no reps on her wall walks early on. So she obviously can go even a little bit faster than what she put out there. So I don't know if she intends to do it again. Probably not. But her score is just like blistering. It was insane. 758.
Insane.
Yikes. Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. She's on another level right now. That's it, guys. Any closing comments? We know where you're going to be coming up. Chris, Chad, what do you got going on? Anything interesting?
Man, I'm just all waiting for Power Monkey Camp. That's it. Just trucking along here and waiting for the end of April, early May.
2 months.
So,
2 months will be here soon enough.
Yep.
Start of our year 10. Can't wait for it, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you both for taking the time today. I love chatting with you guys, catching up, seeing where you guys are at. Chris, I hate that you're 20 minutes away and we haven't seen each other yet, but I know we're going to be able to run each other sometime soon. Give our best to Ellie and Justin on the workout, and we'll chat with both of you soon. Thanks so much for the time today. Good luck, everybody, on the last workout of the 2023 season in the Open, and we'll be back with a new podcast next week.